Now, so soon after the Electoral Commission, INEC, conducted what many believe was a dodgy election that was supposed to have been improved by technology but wasn't, Nigeria's bungling bureaucrats are up to no good again, according to some critics. Amid the disarray of the presidential ballot, the Nigerian Population Commission is preparing to conduct what it says will be a digitized census in May this year, less than a month from now. But with fears already being expressed over the grave injury Nigeria is likely to sustain if it goes ahead with yet another flawed and untested national exercise such as a census, which at the best of times is hugely politically sensitive, those fears have been exacerbated by the announcement in the last day or so of the indefinite postponement of the training of enumerators and supervisors. It's added strength to calls for the census itself to be postponed, despite assurances that the National Population Commission is ready to conduct a credible count. So, deepening debate, but not much political consensus. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Chima Christian, a public policy analyst who believes that the census should most definitely be postponed. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So the National Population Commission pressing ahead with the census next month, even though some have suggested that it should be postponed, some including yourself, to avoid administrative disarray. And tell us why you think it shouldn't take place next month.
Well, my argument is built on 5 pillars. 1 is unaudited systems and processes. Number 2 is mood of the country and possible attacks on NPC staff. Number 3 is the organizational capacity of the NPC itself. Number 4 is political pressure. And then number 5 is the general lack of awareness about the upcoming census. So those are the 5 layers of arguments. And if you go deep down into this, you will see the more reasons why we have asked the federal government to postpone this exercise by at least a factor of 7 months to allow for those gray areas to be addressed.
Yeah, but it's very interesting that you mentioned things like violence. You mentioned that as a potential problem and so on. But I mean, in the past, there's been violence. I mean, but it hasn't stopped the census from taking place. I mean, you can't cede territory to someone over allegations or fears that there might be violence. I mean, obviously they're accompanied by intelligence reports. You see what I mean?
So what we're discussing is not necessarily violence. It's talking about the mood of the country.
Right.
Right from the fuel scarcity and the naira scarcity leading up to the general elections. And then the huge disappointment that INEC did not live up to the expectations of many Nigerians. And you are now following it up with a major national exercise, almost premising it on the same argument of systems, digitization, and all of those things. Close your eyes a minute and imagine what will happen in Lagos, where people who were flogged out of their polling units, and then you knock back on their door a few short weeks after to count them as part of that Lagos population. You begin to sense the kind of, and then all you have to do today is to go to and do opinion poll on Nigerians to ask them how willing are they to participate in this exercise. And then my argument is that a fundamental part of the success is not even just on NPC, who will deal with that, but on the ability of the organization to mobilize Nigerians to. What is the, for instance, turnout in our national exercise that just concluded elections? And then if Nigerians don't participate in the census, then what you have NPC enumerators doing is another estimation. And if it is estimation that we want to do, we can go ahead and do estimation. But if I budgeted 800 billion for a census, then you must mobilize all stakeholders. As of today, those stakeholders are not mobilized.
So in those circumstances, you don't think that an accurate census can be achieved, which really is the objective?
The objective is accurate demographic data.
Yeah.
Right? If that is the objective, with this political climate, there's about to be a change of government. It's a major issue. And now, not just the major...
It's a delicate time.
Yes, it's such a delicate time. Allow for the new government to be inaugurated, allow for the new government to settle in, and then allow for the new government to try to heal the wounds of the political campaign, which you know is almost seasonal, right? So once that nation heals, you can now begin to move on to actual governance issues like enumeration and all of those things. Those will be our arguments. And then remember, that the principal cardinal point is unaudited systems and processes, right? NPC has signified of its readiness to do digitization, and all of us are happy with digitization. But what we've seen is that the exercise is about to be another sad repeat of February 25th. Why? Because the systems, the processes have not been audited, right? Not just the PDA, they said they acquired PDAs, they said they acquired geospatial devices, they said they acquired servers. Just a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the federal government approved 3-point-something billion to acquire critical software. Now, how those software have been able to be integrated with the hardware, we don't know. Whether those hardware and software has been subjected to multi-stakeholder audit tests.
So you want those tested, basically?
Yes, we want those tested, and then we want to see the reports of the test, and especially for those who stand a grave risk of being injured by a flawed census exercise. As you would know, Nigeria's census exercise determines the allocation of resources. I mean, I want us to operate a better structure, but as of today, the federal feeding bottle structure is predicated on census numbers. That determines the allocation to local governments, that determines the allocation to states. And then you see, therefore, why there is this motivation by political actors to inflate Nigeria's census figure. And if you leave porous systems and processes in the hands of enumerators who may be induced or coerced, then you cannot rely on those systems to conduct credible exercise. So for us to have confidence in the systems, they must be tested, and where they have been found wanting, those things must be scaled up before we can go through a major national exercise with those things. Not just the systems now, but the processes. Remember what happened with INEC. Just by the mere allegation that sensitive INEC staff withheld passwords from field workers, just for a matter of hours. And it compromised the entire exercise. So the merits of the beavers and the abyss was compromised because Nigerians did not audit the process. As at today, Mr. Charles, I can tell you with all the enlightenment, you cannot tell me the process between the time enumerators knock on your door and the time your census figure is gazetted as an official document. No process. So we have to know what the process is and audit it.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Let me, since you've been looking at this quite critically, and
for 4 months,
you've been very focused on it. I mean, in previous censuses, because obviously Nigeria has a lot of sensitivities, I mean, issues such as religion and ethnicity were deliberately excluded. Is that likely to be the case this time? If so, does it matter or doesn't it matter?
Well, I'm a public policy analyst, and I don't like dwelling on those talking points. But since you talked about historical precedents, let us deal with that. Historically, Nigeria's census has always ended up in contestations and contestations. As at today now, by our laws, you're not even legally permitted to contest the outcome. The only person by Section 213 of our Constitution that will accept the census is the president. And once the president accepts, you cannot do anything about it. And that's why everything you can do about the census. And remember, the last census exercise in 2006, some people rejected it, including Lagos State government, who rejected it flatly and wanted to conduct another one. Now, the tricky part is this. That why I said that this exercise is another sad repeat of February 25th, in my own estimation, is this. That even INEC is mandated by law to show all workings. They're expected to turn in BVAS reports. They're expected to turn in INEC IREV reports. They're expected to turn in all the deliverables to show how they arrived at the numbers. NPC's laws are different. They just go do what they can do and then announce. The 2006 data have not been released to researchers who applied for the certified through copy of the raw data.
Because you need that.
Yes, if you say that state XYZ has 20 million, we want to understand how you arrived at that.
Absolutely.
But the law, just what they announced, and any elementary student of mathematics will know what we mean by show all workings. You don't just say that your answer is 4. You must be able to show us how you arrived at 4. And then Nigerians must force NPC, whether through our lawmakers, to force NPC to show all workings. If you announce any figure, we want to see how you arrived at that. So because these things are not provided, previous census exercises have always ended up being controversial and contested. And as at today, even the claims that we are 200, 250 million, 220 million, whatever, depending on what data you're looking at, I'm not sure if you study critically about these things that those things are accurately represented.
Well, I mean, that's obviously a projection because Nigeria wasn't that number when the last election.
But even the projection was dealt on 2006, which I've told you had a lot of mortal flaws. And so when you are projecting on a faulty foundation, then...
And when you have what many people see as incompetent leadership, you have bribery, you have corruption, the lack of accurate statistics can actually be responsible for the gross underdevelopment of nearly every sector of life in a country.
I agree completely with you, and that is why you have to also look at the organizational capacity of the NPC itself, right? Look, like most institutions in Nigeria, the NPC is also suffering from that recruitment, reward, command and control structure within organizations that makes it difficult for them to hire and retain talents, right? That's a critical one of them. And then if you also look at the law setting of the NPC, how the NPC officials are appointed, you see why you find it difficult to appoint credible and competent people. Or even when you get them, their loyalties are not necessarily to the Constitution of Nigeria, but to people who facilitated their appointments. Leave that aside. But see, that organization, while it has continued to run skeletal operations since 2006, I think they conducted a mixed survey, they conducted quite a number of other surveys, but they have not done full deployment in nearly 17 years. And if you consider the natural law of attrition, if that organization has not deployed fully in 17 years, it's only fair to assume that the composite organizational capacity has atrophied due to lack of full use in 17 years. Absolutely. And therefore, to mitigate that, you have to see that the greases are, that the rusty parts are well oiled, that the tires are inflated, because what we're about to do is a vehicle that we've packed for 17 years, and then we're about to revive it for a long distance journey. And then we need to see that it has been properly serviced. As of today, MPC has continued to bungle its internal training models. The recruitment of ad hoc staff is a different, we can discuss that differently. Then the recruitment of the tech officials, the award of contracts, of everything, it's just a different bundle of things that if you look at it in holistic, you will just laugh at what is about to happen.
So how
Nigeria.
much time do you think they should be given to what you're talking about? For how long should it
Realistically,
be
it should be more than 1 year, but because part of the exercise is funded by the 2022 appropriations, which has been extended twice to also accommodate this census, right? I'm looking at another extension by at least a factor of 7 months. I'm saying, can we extend to sometime between October and November 2023? So that you have a new government, you have a stable government, and you have a stable political climate, and then you allow time. Because not just postponing, but if you have postponed, we will have to interrogate the systems. The stakeholders in their clusters will have to interrogate the systems. And then after interrogating the systems and the processes and flaws are determined, you also allow time for those flaws to be corrected, for those systems to be upgraded where they need to be upgraded, for there to be field tests where there should be field tests, scenario tests where they should be. And then, before walking into your studio, I had consultations with a doctor of...
Very briefly.
Yes, of computer science, whose major work is on human interaction with systems. And so you're not just designing systems, you must also factor human interactions with those systems. And there are ways, and there are people who know about how to determine human interactions with the systems and how much so those human interactions can corrupt those systems. And those things ought to be done before Nigerians can walk into an
So who is it up to postpone the elections?
The census. We have to, it is Nigerians.
the census.
It is Nigerians that will prevail on their federal governments using any means legally available to them. They can go to court.
No, but what I mean is who makes the decision?
The Federal Executive Council?
The National Population Commission would recommend that it should be postponed, and then the government makes that decision?
If they recommend, but I don't, with all that is going on, I don't think that they have the motivation to do so. But if the Federal Executive Council, if the president wants this postponed,
So you're trying to bring pressure on
Yes, what we're trying to do is to mobilize broad stakeholder consensus around the issues, because they're not being discussed. What Nigerians usually do, and I'll end with this, is that we wait for things to happen, and then we cry, oh, the census was not... But this is before the census. You intervene and interrogate. So I'm inviting Nigerians, all the tears you have for the census, cry it now. All the tactics, everything you're going to do it now. Once it has happened, all you're doing is crying over spilled milk.
That's a very good point, and that's a good note on which to end on. Chima Christian, thank you very much indeed. And Chima is a public policy analyst who believes that the census should be postponed. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for having me.